Good afternoon. Thank you very much to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan for convening this special session on the Asia-Pacific region. And I would like to talk specifically about the projects and the activities of the Green Climate Fund working together with the countries of the Asia-Pacific region. As you may know, the Green Climate Fund is the foremost provider of climate funding in the world, and it has been in existence now for 5 years, since the Paris Agreement of 2015. This fund is an opportunity for countries to lead ambitious climate impact and transformation, seeking to address their climate challenges. So let me show you first of all what this portfolio looks like currently, and in global terms, in this first period of GCF's operation, we have programmed a total of $5.2 billion in GCF funding. $1.6 billion of that was programmed in the Asia-Pacific alone, so approximately 31%. The $1.6 billion spent in Asian Pacific countries attracted $4.2 billion in co-financing, so a total of $5.8 billion altogether. The total number of projects approved is 44, and as the total number of projects which have been approved in GCF in the first period was exactly 100, that means that in fact 44% of projects are taking place in the Asia-Pacific region. Of these, 27 of the projects are already under implementation and actively taking place. Now, I mentioned earlier that we work through partners, and this is an essential part of how GCF works. So we have accredited entities who work with us, who propose the projects, working together with the countries. They actually put together project proposals. They work with executing entities and delivery partners to actually then deliver the projects on the ground. Some of these entities which have been accredited to work with the GCF as partners are international organizations, such as the UNDP, such as FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, such as UNEP, the UN Environment Programme. But there are also a large and increasing number of direct access entities, which are national entities or regionally based entities that can now also work directly with GCF and access the climate funding. Some of these direct access entities that have been approved in the Asia-Pacific region, you can see there are 19 of them, and these include partners such as the Land Bank in the Philippines, the ZAC Bank in Mongolia, and NABARD in India, and many others. In this next phase of GCF's development, we are looking to strongly increase the number of direct access entities through which GCF can work more closely with the countries themselves. GCF has, the board has identified 3 priority regions where GCF needs to invest its money. Of these, small island developing states, which altogether worldwide have accessed 0.8 billion of GCF funding. Then the least developed countries, which have accessed $1.3 billion of GCF funding. And then Africa as a whole has been identified as a priority region, and African countries have accessed $2.2 billion of GCF funding. Of course, some of these coincide because there are some African countries that are also least developed countries and so on. GCF works both through the public sector and with governments and local municipalities, but also with the private sector. And so you can see that approximately 40% of our projects in the first resource mobilization period were private sector projects and about 60% in the public sector. With the private sector projects, there are a range of financial instruments that can be developed. And now increasingly also with public sector projects, these projects become public-private partnerships, and the financial structuring can be more complex than simply applying for a grant from the GCF. You can see how GCF's funding has been deployed through different financing instruments. So the grants allocated in the first period have been 2.4 billion overall, but in terms of long-term concessional loans, it has been $2.2 billion, so 45% and 42% respectively through grants and loans. Then GCF also has the possibility to provide support in terms of equity and in terms of long-term guarantees. And then there is a special category of the results-based payments which are linked to the RED Plus program of the UNFCCC, the forestry program. Now, I'd like to give you a very specific example of a project that's under adaptation because it is supporting the population of Samoa, and specifically in the Vaizigana River catchment, to enhance their resilience and protect them against the increased flooding, which has been experienced several times in the last few years in Samoa with some devastating results. GCF has contributed a total of $65.7 million to this project, and $12 million of those have already been disbursed. The project is estimated to be completed by July 2023. And the outcome is that the population living in Apia and the districts specifically in the catchment of the Vaizigana River are going to be much better protected against the floods that come down the catchment from increased precipitation on the island, and then also the storm surges coming in from the sea. So we see that in terms of the results areas of the GCF that we're looking into, this project is supporting both the infrastructure and the built environment on the island, as well as the livelihoods and assets of people and communities being much better protected. Our estimate is that the number of people benefiting from increased resilience by this project is some 37,000. So for each adaptation project that we undertake, it's the number of beneficiaries that is the crucial indicator that is tracked and that is verified at every stage of the project. In terms of mitigation projects, it's the number of tons of carbon dioxide emitted that is the crucial indicator that is tracked by the project. So what do we look for in terms of projects submitted to the GCF? The two major areas are in terms of climate rationale. In other words, how does this project actually support the country to address its climate challenges? And as you can see in the box, the climate impact of the investment is the key. So we need to see directly how the project addresses the climate challenges. And scientific evidence in the form of climate data needs to be provided to show the severity of the climate threats, to assess the vulnerability of populations in designing the project. Secondly, the additionality of GCF funding is very important in two ways. Firstly, that GCF can help to provide the climate element of larger projects in terms of agriculture, for example, in terms of infrastructure, where there needs to be an additional element of climate resilience built in, GCF can come in on top of much larger investments to make sure that those investments become truly climate smart. And secondly, in terms of additionality, GCF funding can help to crowd in additional funding from the private sector and other players. Once the project has proven that it's a really good investment and is going to result in substantial benefits to the country's economy and to its people, then it's possible to make the case for additional investments to be made and for increased co-financing in the project. I'd like to also mention this country-driven approach. That is a high priority for GCF. The projects need to demonstrate their alignment with the nationally determined contributions of countries, the pledges to the UNFCCC, which this year, 2020, are going to need to be upgraded and updated in order for countries to address the 1.5 degree target and increase their ambition from the previous amount of carbon emissions that were undertaken to be reduced. Secondly, we work from a very early stage with countries through the nationally designated authorities, or the so-called NDAs of the country, which are the part of the government working directly with the GCF, to develop country programs and to make sure that these country programs for investments with GCF are in line with the country's NDCs and also with the National Adaptation Plans, or NAPs. And finally, for every specific project that a country prioritizes and that comes to GCF for funding, the country provides a no objection letter to make sure that all of the government is in support of the project being submitted to GCF for funding. Now, how do we assess projects that come to us? The main investment criteria are in terms of impact potential, in terms of the paradigm shift potential. In other words, can the project truly demonstrate a new way of doing things in terms of addressing climate challenges? In terms of sustainable development potential and the link to the SDGs? In terms of the needs of the recipients and the beneficiaries of the project? In terms of country ownership, as we've already discussed? And finally, in terms of the efficiency and effectiveness of the project. And here the financial and economic analysis of the project is very important. And increasingly we're looking for projects which can generate revenue streams and that are not grant-only projects. In order to get multiplier effect for climate funding, it's extremely important that projects can actually generate revenues and that the funding provided by GCF can have a multiplier effect and crowd in additional financing from the private sector and other players. In terms of compliance with internal GCF policies, of course, we have to look at the fiduciary standards of the projects, risk management, environmental and social safeguards, in terms of indigenous peoples' policies and similar criteria. We have monitoring and evaluation criteria which need to be built into the project from the start. We have a gender policy which requires a gender action plan to be submitted as part of the project proposal to make sure that women who are particularly vulnerable to climate change have their needs addressed specifically by the actions and investments proposed in the project. And finally, GCF has a range of legal standards which need to be met. And finally, before I close, I want to mention with tremendous gratitude that Japan pledged $1.5 billion in the initial resource mobilization period. This was the largest single pledge of any country, and that Japan has once again repeated this very generous commitment under GCF1. So we are very grateful indeed for the cooperation which GCF has had with Japan in the last 5 years. And we look forward very much to continuing to work with Japan and with all the countries in the Asia-Pacific region for increased action in this region that is particularly vulnerable to the effects of climate change. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, my name is Tomo Machiba. I'm a Deputy Director of Climate Technology Center and Network, CTCN. Today I'd like to explain about how CTCN is contributing to the Pacific and in terms of improving the climate resilience. CTCN is part of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. UNFCCC is consisting of two mechanisms. One is financial mechanism, the other one is technology mechanism. Financial mechanism, as you know, Green Climate Fund, and Adaptation Fund, and the GEF, and also several multilateral banks, which provide finance to the developing countries and to improve their climate mitigation adaptation measures. Technology mechanism is established to conduct the technology transfer in terms of policies and technologies. And this is consisting of two bodies. One is Technology Executive Committee, so-called TEC, and CTCN. Our mandate is to support the development, transfer, deployment, and dissemination of climate technologies that can deliver mitigation or adaptation outcomes as defined by COP. And the CTCN itself is under UNFCCC, but jointly hosted by United Nations Environment Programme, UNEP, and the UNIDO, United Nations Industrial Development Organization. And we are based in Copenhagen, Denmark. So CTCN provides different services and mainly divided into the three services. The first one is a core service called technical assistance, which provides actual technology support to the developing countries. Second service is knowledge sharing and relating to the climate technologies. The third one is improving the collaboration networking among different knowledge providers and experts. And also we work both mitigation and adaptation areas and providing a wide range of the sectors and expertise. And CTCN is called the Center and Network. That's where we come the CN in the last abbreviation. And the network means we are not just operating from Copenhagen with 15 people and a small secretariat. Actually, we have a wide range of now over 500 network members, which provide the actual technology transfer services. And also, we have a national designated entity over the 160 countries. And each country nominate a focal point and to work with UNFCCC technology framework, technology mechanism. And also we have 11 consortium partners, which we jointly established CTCN in the beginning, and which come from the notable institutions and from Japan, and it's no members, but it's like like a notable international organization is working on joining other consortium partners. And the network members, out of 500 members, we have 200 private sector organizations, and nearly 100 research institutions, and nearly 90 NGOs. So wide range of sectors joining, But it's like main participation is the private sector organizations and for network members who can provide actual technology assistance and other services. Explaining how CTCN mechanism works, and initially, anyone can propose project and support, and from developing countries to get support on technology mitigation and adaptation in terms of technology transfer. But whoever who are interested in, in the project, they should contact your country's national designated entity, NDE, first. And because we basically receive the request and through the NDE and whatever we provide support. Then once NDE receives the request, then they confirm the alignment of the request with their own countries and the climate priorities, and especially align with their NDC, National Determined Contributions, and technology needs assessment and other frameworks. Then if they confirm this alignment, then they formally provide send the request to the CTCN. Then CTCN, it works with the NDE and to develop the so-called response plan, but actual project plan together, and where we could engage the consortium members and other people to develop the initial project plan. And based on this, we go for the bidding process, where this over 500 network members can join provide proposals. Then the best proposal can be chosen as implementers. So based on this bidding process, then one of the network members, or one or two, or more than that, depending on the proposal, then can join the implementation process. So far, we received 270 requests from the 93 countries. Then, number of requests is keep increasing and quarter by quarter. And so far, we completed nearly 100 technology assistance requests completed. And as we said, and we cover both mitigation and adaptation, and we get a quite diverse request actually. And this mainly the biggest demand coming from the energy area and energy efficiency and renewable energy, but also even mitigation areas and waste management, agriculture, industrial efficiency, and transport, and quite diverse requests we get. Also, we have increasing number of adaptation requests coming from the agriculture and forest areas, and improving the infrastructures and urban planning, and also resilience in the coastal zones, water management, early warning and assessment, and even improving the health. So we get different requests and relating to the climate technologies. Coming to the Pacific regions, and we get so far 12 assistance requests, and the 7 out of 12 is coming from the mitigation areas, 4 coming from the adaptation, then 1 is both covering the mitigation and adaptation. And the example is mitigation areas, and we get requests from the Nauru and about developing the low emission transport in the islands. The adaptation areas and from Palau, and we get the coastal vulnerability modeling and to improve the climate resilience. Then joint way we are explaining, but from Cook Island, and we get requests to develop technology needs assessment. In terms of thematic focus, and from the Pacific Islands, and basically energy request is the top of the request, but also coastal zone management coming the second. But also we get the request on transport, waste management, renewable energy, and agriculture. So it's quite 6 diverse area of the requests we get out of 16 and requests so far. This is about Cook Islands technology needs assessment. and what we have developed, and working with the UNEP DTU partnership, and based also here in Copenhagen. And we get the request from the Office of Prime Minister, and then through the NDE, it's Climate Change Cook Islands, and then we get the request, and then we implemented this project with the UNEP DTU partnerships. And Cook Island is particularly vulnerable to the impact of climate change, affecting ecosystem service, livelihood, infrastructure, and economic progress. But due to the funding capacity constraints, and the country haven't taken the technology needs assessment so far. And TNA is actually helping the country to identify technology needs and gaps and opportunities. And that's why CTCN provided support and to develop this TNA and the technology roadmap, and to get the support from the Green Climate Fund. And also, this is based on this project. Then, idea is that we get a more like a scaled up idea to acquire more funding and to develop a bigger project and from the Green Climate Fund. Another example, not from the Pacific Islands, but we worked with the city of Jakarta in Indonesia on flood modeling and in the adaptation areas. And we worked with the UNEP DHI partnership, and based on the request coming from the Jakarta Research Council and going through the NDE, it's the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. And we get, like a development of the high resolution hydrodynamic model for the area of Jakarta, which are able to produce flood level under different climate and engineering scenarios. And also we carried out a socio-cultural survey to capture the view of local residents on the risk of flooding, along with adaptation mitigation options to alleviate these risks. And based on this modeling helped the local agency to further, using this model to apply for the, different scenarios and also different areas. And this project actually, one of the projects and who helped the, Indonesian president to decide to move out the capital and out of the Jakarta to somewhere in the Sumatra Island. So summarizing and what CTCN is so far doing with Pacific is we start engaging the more Pacific Islands countries, and one new country served is Nauru, and also we get the multi-country request on coastal modeling, including the Kiribati, Marshall Islands, Palau, and the Solomon Islands. So not only single country request the project, and we try to kind of bundle requests and to make it project much bigger. Also, we worked on the first Green Climate Fund readiness project and completed with Tonga. But out of 500 network members, so far we get only 10 members and from the Pacific. So we want to encourage and Pacific stakeholders to be part of our network more. Also, the CTCN support is we focus on early stage of technology transfer and deployment. So we normally focus on a demonstration project, needs assessment, feasibility studies, and also framework policy development and capacity building and knowledge sharing. But also once we have done this project, we should kind of have a more scaled up project, getting more bigger funding from the bilateral donors or multilateral development banks or even private sector investors. So our challenge now and also our wish is to get a more strong linkage with those entities and who has more resources and scale up opportunities. As I said, we want to encourage Pacific stakeholders and to join our network. And network benefit is actually you can participate in the technical assistance project, but also you get more connection with other network members from the other regions to learn each other about how you cope with climate mitigation and adaptation challenges together, to get the latest knowledge about climate technology and innovation, as well as you get more connection with the global community and raising your visibility, and to have more future opportunity with different partners. And the membership is free of charge, and you can join the member from this website. Lastly, and we appreciate the host of this conference and government of Japan. And basically CTCN operated by free donor funding and voluntary contributions. And for the moment, European Union is the biggest donor, but Japan coming to the second. And so really we want to convey our appreciation to the government of Japan, and also like we look forward to the continuing working closely with the Japanese government. Thank you very much for the presentation. And if you have questions, and please feel free to send me the questions and have a discussion with me. And really appreciate your joining this conference. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Russell Smith, and I'm pleased to be here with my colleague Alexis Villari-Orton on behalf of the Ocean Foundation. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the Ocean Foundation and the work that it is doing to address some of the climate-related impacts on the ocean, with a focus on seafood production. The Ocean Foundation is the only international community foundation for the ocean with a mission to support, strengthen, and promote those organizations dedicated to reversing the trend of destruction of ocean environments around the world. The Ocean Foundation has projects and initiatives in over 40 countries and on all 7 continents, through which we work to equip communities that depend on the ocean's health with resources and knowledge for policy development and for increasing capacity for mitigation, monitoring, and adaptation strategies. Since 2003, the Ocean Foundation has provided more than $44 million in grants and services in support of the protection and restoration of healthy ocean and coastal ecosystems around the world. The ocean continues to warm, and the rate of warming is increasing. The amount of ocean acidification also continues to rise. Many have noted the profound impacts that these changes are having on seafood. Changes in the physical environment resulting in, among other things, changes to productivity, geographic range, and migration patterns across all marine species. On average, species have been moving poleward at a rate of up to 50 kilometers per decade since the 1950s, but in some cases the rate is much higher. And the combination of new species interactions and additional pressures such as overfishing are making the physical impacts of climate change worse. In its recent report, The Ocean and Cryosphere in a Changing Climate, the IPCC estimated that for some fish stocks, warming has resulted in a decline in maximum catch potential of as much as 9% during the 20th century. The additional stress from warming also inhibits the ability of overexploited stocks to recover and increases the likelihood that more species will become overfished. The report also projects that under a high emission scenario, significant declines in biodiversity and ecosystem structure and function will lead to a severe reduction in global ocean productivity. The report projects that 89% of countries will see an average 10% reduction in fisheries catch by 2050 and a 16 to 25% reduction in the 21st century. This decrease will be significantly higher in tropical coastal regions. Impacts to coral reefs and other fish habitats are expected to reduce harvest from small-scale coastal fisheries by up to 20% by 2050 and by up to 50% by 2100. Increasing acidification and decreasing oxygen levels also have a negative impact on sea life. These impacts include a decline in shellfish due to the improper development of their shells and the choking off of coastal fisheries by the proliferation of harmful algal blooms. These changes are also challenging ocean and fisheries governance at both the national and international level. The importance of seafood has been well established. Approximately 3 billion people in the world rely on both wild-caught and farmed seafood as their primary source of protein. It is estimated that more than 250 million people globally depend directly on fisheries and aquaculture for their livelihoods, and millions more are employed in related value chains. Sustainably managed fisheries can make a significant contribution to the attainment of the Millennium Development Goals and the targets set by the World Summit on Sustainable Development and the World Food Summit. And seafood has an important role in the various ecosystems in which it occurs. These are among the reasons why the Ocean Foundation has invested so much of its resources in addressing climate change and its impacts, including the impacts on seafood production. My colleague, Alexis Valori-Orton, is going to discuss some of our work on understanding and addressing the impacts of ocean acidification.
Thank you, Russell. As Russell mentions, one of the effects related to climate change that we're most concerned about is ocean acidification. So in 2003, we launched our International Ocean Acidification Initiative to help vulnerable human communities understand changes in ocean chemistry, monitor the changes in their waters, assess the risks to their social and economic health, and address the effects with good policy based on good science. The fundamentals of ocean acidification are something that underlie all of our work and are important to understand, so I wanted to give a brief overview of them. Right now, we're experiencing an unprecedented decrease in the ocean's pH. Ocean acidification is defined as the rapid decrease of oceanic pH as a result of carbon emissions. The ocean absorbs approximately 1/3 of the CO2 that's emitted into the atmosphere, and there's nothing in the historical record that equals our current rate of change of pH in the ocean. Though it's not exactly the same as climate change, it has the same source. So carbon dioxide is the cause of both climate change and ocean acidification. And importantly, ocean acidification, just like climate change, varies across space and time, meaning it's not happening exactly the same way in every single part of the ocean. So in order to understand it, we have to have very local information. When we look at how ocean acidification affects marine life, I like to think of it in sort of 4 different categories. You have some organisms which face direct mortality as a result of the change in chemistry. So for example, some shellfish are unable to build their shells. Some coral have trouble building their skeletons, and that can lead to direct mortality. Other times, the organism won't necessarily be directly killed by ocean acidification, but they'll suffer and have a loss of function, fitness, or quality. So a few examples of that include clownfish, when exposed to increased CO2, have problems with their chemosensory systems and swim towards predator scents instead of away from them. Other animals like mussels and shrimp invest more energy into building their shells under high CO2 and less energy into growing meat, which means that as a commercial product, the value of that species might decline even if that species is still living in a future ocean. We also see that there's a general loss of biodiversity when the CO2 levels in the ocean go up. And then, of course, all of these various effects on individual species have food web impacts. One that we're particularly concerned about is the Pteropod is a small marine snail, which forms the base of the food web for many ecosystems, including it serves as 60% of the diet for juvenile pink salmon, which is just one example of a really commercially valuable species being affected. Our program focuses quite a bit on enhancing the ability of communities of scientists to monitor ocean chemistry. And in some ways that might sound abstract and separate from seafood, but I want to explain why we choose to focus on monitoring. Essentially, with this unprecedented change, we're entering an ocean with increased uncertainty. When that comes to fisheries management, aquaculture, or other forms of extraction from the ocean, that increased uncertainty makes it very difficult to know how to predict, for example, maximum sustainable yield, or when to spawn your shellfish, when to time fishery seasons. But when we monitor, we basically can identify patterns in these ocean changes, and then that brings us to a level of stability where we can make good management decisions. We can do things like site our shellfish farms in places that are less vulnerable, that have less acidification than other places. Our program, therefore, has worked on lowering the cost of conducting monitoring through building what we nicknamed GOON in a box. GOON stands for the Global Ocean Acidification Observing Network. Our system allows scientists to collect high-quality data for a fraction of the cost of previous systems. The box costs $20,000, whereas previous systems cost at least $300,000. We've trained more than 100 scientists in more than 20 countries on how to use this equipment, and we've delivered 17 kits to 16 countries, helping establish monitoring programs where there was absolutely no monitoring before. When it comes to seafood, there's another area that we're exploring, which is to build resilience directly into the seafood sector by creating low-cost methods to adapt to ocean acidification in aquaculture facilities. I want to highlight this photo because it shows what is already happening in some aquaculture facilities as a result of ocean acidification. On the left-hand side, you see a healthy oyster developing at levels where the pH of the water is around 8.0. Whereas on the right-hand side, during an acidification event in Oregon, you see that the oyster was unable to grow. This was not a laboratory experiment. This was happening because of natural variation in the water and increased acidification due to carbon dioxide. And what happened was there was massive mortality in those hatcheries at that time. So what the shellfish farmers in Oregon were able to do is start monitoring their waters and actually predicting when these low pH events were going to occur and timing their spawning around those events, as well as buffering the water to basically make it so that water was suitable for the oyster larvae. Now, that's a wonderful system, but right now those systems are very expensive and complicated to maintain. So what we're doing is trying to create a low-cost, simple version of this system that we can then train aquaculture facilities around the world on how to use, much like we've been training scientists on how to use our kits. So that's in a nutshell our approach to a specific aspect of climate change, and I'm going to turn it back to my colleague Russell to talk about additional programming that we have.
Thank you, Alexis. Another area in which TOF and its partners have been active is in supporting the development of marine protected areas, or MPAs. Through the creation and appropriate treatment of MPAs, we can conserve biodiversity and enhance resilience. We do this by establishing areas where we have reduced the threat and stress on important parts of the marine environment. These efforts to create MPAs also can enhance fisheries and provide some resilience to the impacts of climate change. TOF's leadership in promoting the development of MPAs has included, among other things, conducting outreach in Europe and Russia to build support for the creation of MPAs in the Southern Ocean, supporting Chile's existing commitment to ocean conservation and the establishment of MPAs in the Southern Ocean, participation on the Sargasso Sea Commission, and in the development of a management strategy for this important and ecologically significant area, complementing the efforts of the High Seas Alliance through targeted outreach work to support the development of high-level political commitments from Caribbean, Latin American, and African countries to protect marine biodiversity, and working to advance ongoing negotiations at the United Nations to develop a new international legal instrument enabling the establishment of marine protected areas and reserves in the high seas, and for an increased commitment by the parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity to protect at least 30% of the ocean by 2030 through strongly protected marine protected areas. Mangroves also have an important role to play in addressing climate change and mitigating some of the impacts that climate change has on fisheries. They can, among other things, sequester carbon, mitigate ocean acidification, enhance carbon resilience, serve as nurseries for seafood and help to restore depleted stocks, help to preserve biodiversity, and provide natural infrastructure for storm protection. TOF has helped nonprofit and corporate sponsors in Fiji, Puerto Rico, Honduras, the United Arab Emirates, Belize, and Mexico to identify, assess, plan, and implement mangrove restoration projects. An important component of TOF's work on mangrove restoration has been to develop local community capacity to develop, implement, and lead these efforts by providing institutional infrastructure support and strategic guidance. With support from our extensive network of mangrove scientists and restoration experts, TOF has hosted and supported training workshops to provide locals with the resources and training needed to launch and sustain successful restoration projects. One of those has been in Fiji. With the support from the U.S. State Department, TOF is funding a mangrove restoration project that focuses on the role mangroves play in mitigating ocean acidification. This project uses the Go On in a Box tool that Alexis described earlier. Information collected using that TOF-developed tool helped in the design and implementation of the project's nursery site. In addition, in March of 2019, the project held a training workshop which focused on carbon stock assessment and the verified carbon standard methodology for quantifying carbon storage by coastal wetlands. The work that TOF does in support of the ocean can't be accomplished without our many sponsors, partners, fiscally sponsored funds, and friends of funds. While we don't have time to list all of these contributors, I do want to give them a tip of the hat. They are listed on this slide. If you'd like to get additional information about the Ocean Foundation, please visit our website at www.oceanfdn.org. Thank you very much to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan for putting on this excellent program and for inviting TOF to participate. And thanks to you, the audience, for your attention and interest in these important topics.
Hi everyone, my name is Takahiro Morita, Senior Deputy Director General, Global Environment Department, Japan International Cooperation Agency JICA. I'd like to introduce JICA's Cooperation for Climate Change in Pacific region. My colleague Ms. Masako Ogawa, she is JICA expert and she is one of the panelists of Session 2. She will touch upon climate resilience and disaster risk reduction, so I will focus on the area of nature conservation activities of JICA. I'd like to introduce about JICA. JICA is an implementing agency of Japan's ODA with a modality of grant aid including technical cooperation and concessional yen loan. Our scale of operation in year of 2017 was $2 billion US. This slide shows JICA's guiding principles on SDGs. JICA will play a pivotal role in achieving 10 goals, including Goal 13, climate change. We will utilize Japan's experience and technology to promote SDGs. This is so-called SDGs wedding cake model produced by Stockholm Resilience Center, Norway. This picture illustrating nature conservation and climate change will lead the achievement of SDGs. So JICA put priority on SDGs related to biosphere. This is JICA's strategy for nature conservation. As for nature conservation, we set overall goal as harmonization between nature conservation and human activities, addressing sustainable forest management, strengthening resilience and livelihood improvement, and biodiversity conservation, in line with related conventions such as UNFCCC, UNCCD, and UNCBD. And this is an example of loss and degradation of mangrove forest. According to FAO, mangrove forest declined from 18.8 million hectares in 1980s to 15.2 million hectares in 2005. This means during 25 years, 3.5 million hectares has been lost globally. Moreover, the coral reef is in severe situation as well. And mangrove forests and coral reefs are very much important element of coastal ecosystem services. And the people enjoy the multiple services such as provisioning, regulating, cultural, and supporting services. But coastal ecosystem services is in danger. The main drivers of loss and degradation of coastal ecosystem are high population and overfishing. So I think that the intervention to realize the sustainable use of natural resources is very much important. Now, I'd like to introduce 3 JICA projects in this field. First example is Philippines, Indonesia, Japan Triangle Cooperation. With this project, we pay attention to the mangrove especially. Carbon storage and sequestration capacity is much higher than that in terrestrial forest. We are assessing the carbon dynamics and coastal ecosystem services, and based on the findings, we will come up with the blue carbon strategy. We already set 10 project sites and established a network of national and local government, NGOs, private sectors, institutes, and universities. The second example from Palau. With the cooperation of Ryukyu University, Okinawa, Japan, we identified the hotspot of marine biodiversity and produced the area management policy recommendation in the field of environmental policy, ecotourism, and environmental education. The third and last example is PNG. With this project, we capacitated PNG counterpart on landscape management and developed zone planning and rural economic plan, recognizing concept of map. That is all from my presentation. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to make a presentation at this very important meeting. My name is Osamu Mizuno from Institute for Global Environmental Strategies, or IGES. Today, I want to focus on explaining Asia-Pacific Climate Change Adaptation Information Platform, or AP-PLAT, because the purpose and actions under AP-PLAT is exactly focusing on the international cooperation to support climate actions in Asia. Therefore, it's very well fit to the topic of this session. Now let me move on to the next slide. Slide 2, as you can see, AP-PLAT was established on 16th June this year during G20 ministerial meeting as a regional flagship initiative on adaptation. As you can see in the photo, that this initiative was launched with the participation of the representatives of the government of Japan, Thailand, Indonesia, and also representatives from IGES and National Institute of Environmental Studies, or NIS, and GCF, ADB, and UNEP. And as is seen on slide 3, the mission of this AP-PLAT is to create an enabling environment for climate risk-informed decision-making and practical adaptation action through synchronizing and harnessing best available efforts among partner countries and organizations. Slide 4 and 5 explains the structure of AP-PLAT. It has 3 major pillars. One is scientific information knowledge, second is adaptation tool, and third one is building capacity. And as for the information, as you can see on the slide 6, we have already developed the AP-PLAT website, and it already contains a lot of useful information, like financial information and maps and NDCs, and the good practices and the tools and so on and so forth. And one of the highlights of this website is it contains very sophisticated risk prediction information. And for the adaptation tool, I can show just 2 examples. The first one is on slide 7, and this was about the so-called PWLM, or participatory watershed land use management system, which we developed with the support of Ministry of Environment Japan at the Silang Santa Rosa watershed in the Philippines. It's tried to ensure the participation of the key stakeholders in developing reliable climate change adaptation action plans as well as the land use plans. And slide 8 also explains our newly developed tool, which is on the hazard mapping technology for storm surge and storm wave using satellite information and so on and so forth, focusing on the SIDS area. And we want to include such useful tools and information in this AP-PLAT further in the coming years. And for the more detailed information to provide, we try to develop I-PLAT and T-PLAT in Indonesia and Thailand respectively, as we have already developed the information platform called A-PLAT in Japan. And the NIS is helping to develop such a platform in both countries, which is explained in slide 9. Now let me move on to the explanation of the capacity development program, which our organization is expected to serve as a secretariat of this program. Because this is directly focusing on helping the countries in the region to facilitate the climate actions. So this capacity development program is intended to be a network activities of institutions in the Asia Pacific based on voluntary participation, and the program intends to build on existing capacity building activities of the partner institutions and provide opportunities for collaboration. And finally, this program will focus on generating added values through collaboration and partnership among partner institutions for better adaptation in Asia and Pacific. And we emphasize 6 main components under this program, as you can see on slide 11. First one is networking of capacity strengthening institutions. Second, development of a knowledge sharing platform. Third, establishment of a new fund to facilitate capacity building. And fourth, continued development of the Climate Change Asia training program on mentoring. And fifth, launching thematic capacity building courses. And finally, sixth, promoting bottom-up adaptation actions. So I do not have enough time to explain in detail of all the emphasized components under this capacity development program. So let me explain just a few key features of these efforts. For the first component, slide 12, we plan to provide a kind of a system or platform for the network among the capacity building organization through organizing annual meeting and so on and so forth for networking. And for component 2 on slide 13, this is first we plan to do analytical mapping of existing training institutions for adaptation and sharing the results, so that we can see the strengths and weaknesses of our efforts as a region as a whole, and try to share good practices, lessons learned, and training modules from all the partners. And for the component 3 on slide 14, we are thinking to establish a new fund to facilitate cooperation to support capacity development project, which will be implemented jointly by participating institutions, and also try to conduct training for trainers for enhance the level of the capacity development institutions in Asia. And the fourth component is continued development of Climate Change Asia program, which was launched a few years ago from mainly led by the Asian Institute of Technology, or AIT, and also ISIS have been supporting the implementation of this program. This program is focusing on the enhancing the capacity of the countries in the region for developing bankable project proposals to make them possible to access to the funds such as GCF more easily. So it's not just training courses, but also includes mentoring efforts, so that we'll try to take care of them not only during the training period, but also even after that training period. And it's already has been a great success. As you can see on the slide 17, it already trained more than 900 trainees and from the 38 countries. And the demand for this program is huge, but so far we cannot accommodate all the requests because of the limitation of our capacity. Therefore, we plan to expand our scope further. And the component 5 is launching of a thematic capacity building program, because CCA is basically introducing schemes of GCF and others. Therefore, we also believe it is essential to have some efforts focusing on the specific topics such as disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation integration, or promotion of ecosystem-based adaptation, and gender consideration, and so on and so forth. And finally, we also, as you can see on the slide 19, we also plan to do something to promote bottom-up adaptation actions through utilizing through information provided by TPLAT or IPLAT. So in summary, APPLAT was launched to promote climate risk-informed decision-making and practical adaptation action in the region. And the scope of APPLAT covers from developing and sharing climate information to promoting real actions on the ground through capacity building efforts. APPLAT is ready to contribute in reducing the fragility in Asia-Pacific region. We're looking forward to strengthening partnership with various like-minded partners in this region under the APPLAT framework. Thank you for your attention.
Hello, everyone. My name is Reki Nakajima from OECC, Overseas Environmental Cooperation Center, Japan. I am the secretariat of the meeting. Thank you all for participating in today's WebEx conference. This is a part of the International Conference on Climate Change and Fragility in the Asia-Pacific region 2019. The original conference was supposed to be held on October 12th at Pacifico, Yokohama, but everybody knows, unfortunately, that unprecedented typhoon Hagibis was supposed to hit Tokyo directly, and we had to cancel that event. But fortunately, with advanced technology and ability to adapt to climate change, we can show our way of the, so to say, the resilience to climate change, and have this meeting today. Me, Ricky, I will take the role as a moderator tonight. And then why not let us introduce to each other first. I think today the participants are all over from all over the place, so I would appreciate if you can state your name, organization, and maybe what time it is right now. Mr. Russell.
Good morning, everybody. Name is Russell Smith. I'm a director on the Ocean Foundation in the United States, and I'm located in Washington, D.C., where it's 5:30 in the morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning.
And you have your colleague, Miss Valerie Orton.
Hi, my name is Alexis Valari Orton. I'm a program officer at the Ocean Foundation, also located in Washington, D.C., where it is 5:37.
Thank you for waking up this early in the morning. I think a lot of coffee right now, I guess. And now I think we have a panelist from Japan, Mr. Morita. Can you introduce us? Introduce yourself? Yes.
Okay, thank you, Nakajima-san. My name is Takahiro Morita. I'm a Senior Deputy Director General, Global Environment Department, JICA. Now, it is 7:40 in Japan. It's a very cold night. Thank you.
So good evening to Mr. Morita. And so finally, Mr. Machida, are you ready?
Yes, can you hear me? Yes, my name is Tomo Machiba, and I'm Deputy Director of the Climate Technology Center Network, CTCN. And the CTCN is part of the UNFCCC technology mechanism, but hosted by UNEP and the UNIDO. So we are part of the United Nations. And we are based in Copenhagen, Denmark. And now time is 11:38 in the morning, but looks like evening and just quite dark and damp today.
I see. So good day, Mr. Machiba. So we have, yes, exactly 3 different locations. So good morning, good day, good evening to you all. And so now I would like to start session 3. As you already may know that we already had first 2 sessions, session 1 and session 2, and we shared you the recordings. In the session 1, we have discussed the current situation of the ocean and how climate change affects it. The panelists were more the scientists, so we had very, very intense discussion among the panelists. And session 2's theme was climate action in sea areas. So there were a unique mix of panelists from administrative side, NGOs, and private sector. So a lot of interesting new ideas were shown. And now the session 3. Today's theme is the international cooperation to support climate action. And I hope we are going to have an interesting talk as well as the last 2 sessions, but because to fight against climate change, the cooperation is necessary. So I believe this is a key session of this international conference, and I hope we can wrap up well this once postponed by the real climate change effect with good notes. I would like to introduce the presentations first. First one was Mr. Dr. Grobicki, who couldn't attend today's meeting. She is the Deputy Director for Adaptation Division of Mitigation and Adaptation of Climate Fund, which is helping out the developed countries' mitigation and adaptation action under UNFCCC. And in this GEF, she has 250 employees and about $3 billion invested in the programs. She introduced her foundation. And she also shown some examples in Samoa or Vanuatu, how they help out the meteorological aspect. And a lot of other programs going on in Asia and Pacific region. And Mr. Machiba's presentation, the other hand of the UNFCCC under working group, CTCN. CTCN is helping out technological contribution to the developed and developed country for mitigation and adaptation. He's here today as he introduced himself from Copenhagen. He introduced what kind of organization CTCN is, and then he explained that energy sectors is very much expected area of help, so to say, support from CTCN. So, Mr. Machiba, I have a question. It seems like CTCN works a lot with the other organizations such as UNEP and GCF. Is there any agreement between those three, between those organizations, or is it just project basis?
Okay. And basically, CTCN is established under the COP mandate and from the climate negotiation. And the Green Climate Fund is the same. And in terms of financial mechanism, we are part of the technology mechanism. And then it's like like a different organization kind of submitted a bidding to host this CTCN. Then UNEP won the bid, so that's why UNEP and together with UNIDO is hosting CTCN and since 2013. And in terms of project, it's like how it works. Basically, we are demand-driven mechanism. So it's basically the countries and who wish to implement any requests relating the technology on mitigation adaptation and can request through the nationally designated entity, which exists in the most of country. Then CTCN pick up the request and then we kind of procure this project, and through we have 500 network members. So basically 500 network members, one would then win the bid and they can implement this project. But we provide a quite small scale support of up to 250,000 US dollar right now. So we try to promote in a way, and we can kind of first stage of project development. We can support with this amount of money. Then if the project successful, then they can scale up, and then they can go for the GF and the GCF. Then we are happy to help and to draft and the proposal for GF and the GCF, and then they get the more bigger implementation, and that's how we are trying to make a linkage between technology mechanism and the financial mechanism.
Thank you very much. And next presenter is Mr. Smith from Ocean Foundation. He also have today colleague Ms. Ott. They presented us the basics of their foundation and purpose, and how they are trying to mitigate the effect to the marine organism of the climate change impact. They also shown us the International Ocean Acidification Initiative, or some their activities in the marine protected area. So my question to Mr. Smith is that about the ocean acidification, the data is used such surface ocean CO2 atlas, the international database. Is your data also submitted or published in those database to work together?
This is Alexis. I think I can answer that question. The SOCAT, the Surface Ocean Network, primarily is working with open ocean data streams, and it's a very, very high quality network of buoys. What we tend to focus on in our initiative is coastal monitoring and monitoring in places where there has been no monitoring at all previously. Our partners follow the SDG 14.3 guidelines, which we helped work with the IOC to create. And so what we do is we train them on the submission format for the UN SDG process, which is also sort of the globally accepted standard template for ocean acidification data. And so there's now a data portal with the IOC that was created to host this data. And that's officially where we require our kit recipients to upload their data. We also ask them to liaise with the Global Ocean Acidification Observing Network, the GOON, which does not host the data, but they have a data portal for visualizing the data. And so that, so through it's called the IODE, through the IOC is where the data goes. But I think the goal is that many of the people we train as they transition from, using what we call the Go On in a Box kit, which is really for coastal applications, they might become involved in the SOCAT process, in the international open ocean community as regional experts from their own countries.
But I guess, coastal acidification is also very, very important aspect we have to watch, because there are so many lives or so many organisms dependent on those values. Thank you very much. And now I would introduce Mr. Morita's presentation. There were also another presentation from JICA in session 2, which was from Ms. Ogawa. So I appreciate it very much from the cooperation from JICA. In this Mr. Morita's presentation, he introduced us JICA's strategy for natural conservation, and he introduced us the project about the blue carbon, the mangroves in Philippines and Indonesia, and about other projects such as coral reef protection project in Palau, or in other areas. In Dr. Grobitzy's presentation, I read interesting fact that JICA is the accredited entity of GCF. Is there any strategy to use this accredited as a position as an accredited entity? Is there any strategy for JICA?
Thank you very much, Nakajima-san, for your questions. Yes, the JICA becomes one of the accredited entity of GCF in year of 2017. Our priority area is a disaster risk reduction and then conserve the ecosystem and biodiversity. So now we try to formulate a project proposal in such area. But unfortunately, at this moment, no project has been materialized. It's just under the formulation process. Due to this, some lack of the capacity to come up with adequate project proposal in which meets that some the clarification given by the GCF Secretariat. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So, but this is good because there is still chance for another cooperation internationally. And finally, today, Mr. Mizuno from IGES, he cannot attend today, but he explained about AP Plat, which is a so-called platform working about the adaptation in the Asia Pacific. And this was the initiative started in the G20 related event in this June in Karuizawa, Japan. This AP Plat provides scientific information, knowledge, and tools, and trying to do the capacity building. So this, I hope everybody has some idea about the today's 5 presentation from each. And if there's a question between panelists, I would like to open the floor for you.
Thank you very much, Nakajima-san. May I make some comments?
Please.
Yes. First of all, my comments to Machiba-san about CTCN. I very much appreciated the CTCN contribution a lot. Because the capacity development of the recipient country is one of our main concern. So your technical assistance is very much important. As I earlier said, we face some difficulty in the short of the capacity to come up with appropriate project proposal for GCF. So in that sense, your contribution is very much important. So I expect further collaboration among the stakeholders. And my next comment to the Ocean Foundation, to Smithson and Alexson. And then I fully agree with your presentation, especially on the challenges under the International Ocean Acidification Initiative, especially in terms of the quality data. When we discuss about policy with the policymakers in recipient countries, I sometimes feel we discuss without adequate data or quality data. So proper policy should be established through quality data and monitoring. So in that sense, the your challenge and initiative is very much important, and we can share common interest in that sense. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you very much for your comment, Mr. Morita. I think we all know the importance of cooperation, and everybody can help us help each other. Any comments from other participants?
May I give kind of feedback on Morita-san? And
Please.
no, thank you very much for Morita-san and for your questions. And that's where exactly, like CTCN wish to help the, filling the gap, let's say. And we understand, especially LDCs and the seeds, they don't have a, great capacity to come up with, interesting project ideas. That's where, all the donors and are quite struggling, and even though they wish to, support those countries. And that's where, CTCN, it's, great mechanism, like those countries can kind of test the, their initial ideas. Then if this is successful, can apply for the, like a GCF or like, other bilateral donors like JICA to scale up the, their ideas. So I pretty much, appreciate Morita-san's, like understanding about our mechanism, but also, we wish to make a more closer collaboration with JICA and other agencies. And my question returning to the Ocean Foundation as well, and what's we are talking about data, importance of data, and then, really great to see, you try to make a, installing this monitoring station in different places. But it's like, I want to understand your concept of, how data lead to the, like you mentioned the stability, and how, actually the data helps to create, more, adaptation opportunities for the, different countries. That's, and also, we get, few project on mangrove, and mangrove is quite interesting case because it's also serving both mitigation and adaptation in sense. But it's like maybe like this area we can more emphasize climate benefit and to get improve the international collaboration and more raising the resources and for these purposes.
Thank you very much. This is Alexis. I really appreciate that question. I have a couple of ways to answer it, especially when you bring up mangroves. One of the things that we hope data can help us with is identify the most promising adaptation and mitigation techniques, including mangroves. We have a project in Fiji where we're supporting a mangrove restoration and monitoring of the chemistry to really assess the local mitigative properties so that we can explain to policymakers the benefits of this system really concretely and explain the benefits from the chemistry of the water standpoint. Another thing that monitoring can do and that we encourage our recipients to do is try and overlay their monitoring with production of economically valuable species. In some places, that might be pearl farming. In some places in the Caribbean, for example, that might be conch. And then to work with that industry to identify what you might call hotspots or refugia. So, are there certain areas of the coastline that are experiencing more extreme acidification, maybe due to coastal upwelling or agricultural runoff? And how can we help those industries plan, for example, where they might site a new farm, where might be places where they might want to scale back because they're highly vulnerable. And the truth is it's a long process to get this kind of information, but we try and set our partners up for success in terms of having very high quality data. We train them extensively on data management and quality control because we understand how important it is for them to have globally recognized high quality data.
If
To
I,
speak also, oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh, sorry, go ahead and finish.
Oh, I was just going to say that as far as collaboration, I was really inspired by the presentations from JICA and CTCN and areas of potential collaboration with the Ocean Foundation. I think we really try and enable those groups on the ground by providing them support to help them implement adaptation and mitigation projects. And so I see a lot of areas of collaboration in the future, working particularly with blue carbon and coastal restoration and monitoring. One of the slides that unfortunately the recording didn't go through, so I'm going to be updating that, has to do with our seafood adaptation work, which is a newer project where we're trying to build monitoring and dosing systems and aquaculture facilities for adapting to ocean acidification within the aquaculture sector. And so with this, it's the same approach as our monitoring effort, where we want to lower the cost of these technologies, but still make them high quality and have them achieve the outputs. So that's a newer project, and that's a really direct application as far as stability for industries. Russell, if there's anything you'd like to add.
Well, no, actually, I was going to simply say what you said in the second part about collaboration, just to thank both Marita-san and Majiba-san for their comments and thank the organizers for pulling this event together and giving us the opportunity to get to meet each other and exchange ideas, because I think that there is some good room for collaboration among the participants in this call, and it is something that the Ocean Foundation would greatly welcome.
Thank you for comment. Yes, I think it's very interesting that Ocean Foundation is the only community foundation for the ocean. And I was wondering, what are the real strengths being as a community foundation, or what kind of advantage do you have as being this kind of foundation?
Well, I think one of them is local engagement throughout the process of developing and implementing projects, thereby both creating investment, understanding, we're improving education, but also building long-term capacity rather than just sort of doing a project and leaving it, being engaged in a way that really keeps the communities, those that are being served, those as participants, and leaving a much greater legacy, and hopefully having a much greater impact on their ability to engage in protecting the ocean, addressing these challenges that we face to the ocean.
If I may add, another really benefit of the community foundation model is that we are a service provider to the community. That's what we aim to be, and not only to our partners on the ground in terms of helping them with technology and implementation, but also to the funder community and the international policy community. We can host committee advised funds, collaborative funds, and we can give grants to any country in the world, and we have a process for, managing those grants and the reporting and the due diligence associated. So one service that we offer to other groups is basically hosting funds and facilitating outgoing grant making, doing due diligence, helping identify the best partners on ocean issues, because our partner network is very large. We fiscally host more than 50 projects on 7 continents, and we have grantees and partners everywhere. So we really see ourselves as a service provider, as a community foundation, as Russell said, on the ground, but also in this more administrative capacity and really assisting global entities.
There's a request from Mr. Machiba that could you explain us again what exactly community foundation is?
Absolutely. So you might hear community foundation usually in the context of a physical place. The New York Community Foundation is famous, and so essentially it's a way to pool resources to protect something that the community cherishes and wants to strengthen and preserve. So in our case, our community is the ocean. So we pool funding and resources in order to support and strengthen those organizations that work to reverse the trend of destruction on the ocean. And so, again, many community foundations that you might have be familiar with, particularly in the United States, there are a number, tend to focus on communities and cities. So it might be like they receive donations from community members who want to support that city, but those community members might not know exactly how to spend their dollars. They might not know which group is doing the best work on youth engagement or poverty prevention. So they trust the community foundation to know the best way to invest their dollars.
Machiba, okay, he said thank you too. Nice. So I think one of the theme is data and filling the gap between a lot of different organizations. I think JICA is facing also the problem with the local data, because JICA, I think, have a lot of different projects in different area, and its adaptation process, I believe, must be everything regional specific. I think Ocean Foundation also mentioned the importance of region specific data about the ocean acidification. So if what is JICA's approach addressing climate change adaptation in the context of region? Can you explain us that a bit, Mr. Morita?
Yes. Thank you very much, Nakajima-san. Yes, we share the same challenges, how we can integrate the data from the point of view of the each country's context. But at the same time, we have to analyze the regional basis as well. And especially in the Pacific region, relatively the country size is very small and diversified very much. So just to provide the technical assistance to country basis is not so efficient and effective. So we see the regional approach is very much important. So we try to establish the center of excellence in the part of the Pacific area, and try to share the common knowledge and experience, and then try to get together the all data to make more effective and efficient. So the regional approach is very much important in terms of the data collection in Pacific region, I think.
Thank you very much. Mr. Machiba, do you also have any comments on region-specific needs for climate action, which is asked for the support of CTCN?
We kind of try to make an approach to the Pacific Islands, and also we are facing the difficulty like JICA does, and Pacific Island is quite small and they don't have a good capacity. And in the first place, and we try to do was so-called technology needs assessment. So before talking about particular technology request, we try to map the where country can make a most impact through change and by different climate technologies, and that's where we provide support and through the UNEP-DTU partnership and also based in Copenhagen, and that's we are promoting as a kind of starting point to plan for their like how to meet their NDC and SDG goals. And but after that, it's like also we wish to provide more like hands-on either workshop or mentoring, and to come up with more interesting climate technology help, and like we are normally kind of waiting the request from the country, but just only waiting and wouldn't work. So it's like we try to more closely approach to the country itself.
I see. But those help can be initiated by JICA or like Ocean Foundation also, right? So if they want ask you for technological help, you can collaborate with them.
Yeah, that's sure. And for instance, and the Ocean Foundation can, we have a so-called nationally designated entity, and in each country. So if you wish to implement certain kind of technology project, then they can approach NDE and to come up with a proposal together, for instance. And that can be like NDEs normally sit in the Ministry of Environment or Energy, and in each country the ministry is not necessarily having a great knowledge about community needs. So if like organization like Ocean Foundation has a linkage with community locally, then they can pick up like local needs and then convey to this nationally designated entity. Then they can kind of come up with the official request to the CTCN, or even going to the JICA and the GCF.
That's an excellent point, and I really see that as an area of collaboration between our organizations. The Pacific Islands are particularly difficult, as has been mentioned, because there's just very few staff, and they have to manage enormous EEZs, enormous portfolios. We also think a regional approach is necessary in the Pacific, And our next phase of our work in the Pacific Islands, we hope to establish, just as JICA explained, a center of excellency. And we really think that that's the right approach for the Pacific region, because it's very hard for each country to have all of the capacity. So we're working with the University of the South Pacific on the concept of a regional training hub for ocean acidification that might expand to other issue areas of monitoring. And we also recognize the significant challenge. But I do think that I see a great area of collaboration in our help being able to identify those local needs, support local groups to coordinate with their designated entities and surface these needs. I am curious, with the CTCN, do you ever have a challenge working on a regional collaboration, between multiple countries, because it is a country by country designated entity? Are you able to do sort of multi-country projects easily?
Thank you very much for your point. It's like we are increasingly getting kind of similar proposal from the different countries. And so we are increasingly try to bundle the requests. So in case of Pacific, and normally they work based on kind of regional forum and conferences. And each time, and they, have the climate change related forum, and we attend, and we try to promote the same idea to the different islands. And the possibility is like, each NTE and come up with the same request, then we can bundle as a regional project. That's happening in Latin America and the part of Africa right now. So it's like doing the same in Pacific is also could be great for us.
If I might, I just wanted to emphasize that even as we look at the Pacific as a particular region, within that region, climate is having different impacts in different parts of the region. So it will be important as we, as you think regionally, to recognize that, the Arctic and then your tropical they're having different effects from climate change, and they need to be there's going to need to be further specialization within the region, further focus on what the particular impacts are to particular countries, and even within countries to particular parts of those countries. And we can't lose sight of that.
Thank you very much. I think we all know the importance of cooperation, but I believe so far there's not that much collaboration going on between different agencies or foundations. What do you think is a barrier right now? Why isn't everybody cooperating together? Can I hear your opinion? To everybody, I think, whoever comes up with idea.
Okay, thank you, Nakajima-san. I would like to make some comment on your question. Yes, of course, we are always talking about the collaboration, but in reality, we face some difficulty because in each organization have different responsibility in terms of the accountability to the stakeholder. In JICA's case, we have to explain the Japanese national, the reason why we collaborate with other stakeholders, and then our JICA has their own regulation because we used ODA. So sometimes we cannot overcome that different accountability regime, but still I can see a lot of spaces to be collaborated. So I appreciated your moderation very much because today's meeting is very much great opportunity to me to further discuss how we can collaborate furthermore with overcoming our different responsibility to our own stakeholders.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smith, any comment?
So I would agree with Mr. Maria-san. Maria-san, I'm sorry. I also would simply point to knowledge and opportunities to connect. And I think that one of the great things about today was a chance to get to meet and talk with and connect with and think about collaboration among some groups that don't ordinarily come together.
Mr. Machiba?
And actually, I get inquiry from one of the country yesterday, and talking about why you don't collaborate with this and that. That looks like overlapping, and like to see kind of synergy would be great. And then for us, it's also countries forgetting, and CTCN is established and according to the mandate agreed by all the governments, let's say. And so that we are working based on your agreement. Then other institutions also they establish and because of the other part of the agreement or mandate coming from different conventions or different discussions. Then we have also bilateral institutions. So apparently part of the reason is each government setting up their own institutions and the mechanism, and also that's part of the competition. And but also we are getting lot of pressure from the donor countries, and the limited resources, and we shouldn't have minimize the overlapping, and then try to find the niche clearly. So this type of like a discussion would be great, and by meeting with actually face to face with different institutions, then we certainly see the opportunity to make a very concrete collaboration. And we need this more kind of really face to face effort, and to create synergetic opportunities. And otherwise like we ending up and creating the similar initiative and going in parallel, and then bit of waste of resources and from the other people's point of view. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Yeah, so it's really so unfortunate that our first original meeting was canceled due to the typhoon. I think if we were meeting not virtually but in person, I think we had more intense discussion. I think we had great discussion today also. If there's any other comments, I would like to, yes, maybe one more or two more comments from panelists or from audience.
Nakajima-san, may I ask one question to Smith-san and Alex-san regarding the project sustainability? In case of JICA, our project term is just 5 years normally. So every time when we complete the project, we face the issues of the sustainability due to lack of the counterpart fund or due to lack of the human resources. So your activity put emphasis on the mid and long-term monitoring, and then people's participation. So how you can secure the project sustainability under your program? May I know your hint and tips?
It's a very difficult, challenge. There's a few ways we try to ensure sustainability. Our investment is usually on a 2 to 3 year basis as far as a commitment to each group monetarily, but we try to provide platforms for support going forward. One of those is through mentorship. We work to create mentor-mentee relationships between all of our recipients, which are permanent. We provide scholarship and travel assistance to like small kind of mini grants to try and assist. And then a key thing for us is the design of the monitoring program. We work very hard to make sure that all the technology that we're transferring is easy to repair, easy to maintain, and cheap to replace, because we recognize that many of, at least in the ocean monitoring space, many of the projects of the past often deployed these very advanced systems that required significant upkeep. And so as soon as the project period ended, those systems maybe stopped functioning, and the recipient country didn't have the capacity to repair them. So we focus on having these really modular, low-cost systems. So if one part breaks, it's $100 to replace it, or $400 and not $40,000. We're about 5 years into this process of technology transfer. So far, it's been going really well, and people have been able to repair and keep their systems going. But I'm sure we're going to encounter more problems, as always. So I'd say trying to think about, if you're using technology, right, it's a little different depending on the program area. But if there's specific technology, really thinking about, especially in the Pacific Islands, the idea of sending something overseas for maintenance, that's never going to happen unless they have explicit financial support to do that. So how can we ensure that it's something that can be fixed locally? And that's really one of our approaches.
Thank you very much, Ms. Alex.
Thank you very much. Any other comment, questions? Last question.
I also just want to thank you so much for bringing us together around why we don't collaborate maybe as much is because we don't always have the chance to meet one another. We are very well connected in the ocean community, but not always with others working on climate adaptation. That is a very large community. So I thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to connect across our disciplines, because there's so much area for collaboration.
Thank you so much for that comment, because yes, we wanted to provide it's our goal as a secretariat or organizer of this event is perfectly matched if everybody was happy to see each other and talk to each other. Unfortunately, really, that typhoon, the Hagibis, that we had to cancel the event, but I will be happy or very, very excited if one of those project will be soon in any kind of collaboration and happens. So I think I'm gonna close this session 3, and finally the international conference on climate change and fragility in the Asia Pacific region 2019. Thank you very much for everybody's cooperation and attendance today. Everybody, good day in America, good lunch in Copenhagen, and good night in Tokyo. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nakajima-san. Thank you.
So much.